on any.
Welcome into the first edition of year 10 of the Game Plan podcast, something like that. It's close to it. That's Greg Barnes. That's Jason Staples. I'm Tommy Ashley, Johnny T-shirt and JohnnyT-shirt.com. First question, Jason. Since you were talking before I muted us all, before the video came in, has there ever been a year where we knew less about anything?
No.
I've never I was asked that question earlier on the radio, and I said I can't recall ever. And I guess it's the new era of college football coupled with the Bill Belichick factor. But Greg, your take on it? I mean, there's nothing, very little.
Look, it's a new world for all of us, and if you go back, 9 months now. We knew Mac Brown was on the way out. We had no idea that Bill Belichick would be the head coach of North Carolina football. It still just sounds so strange. I remember when we first heard that he was a name, and you just kind of laugh it off, and then you keep hearing, "Oh, it's serious." Like he's actually interested. And even to this day, it's such a strange thing. Pulling up inside Carolina and seeing Bill Belichick doing interviews. Tommy, when we were in Charlotte for the ACC football media days, just seeing the fanfare, it's just incredible. And it's just not anything that I've seen before. And I've been fortunate enough to cover a lot of Final Fours and those types of things. This is just on a different level. And Tom Petty said, waiting is the hardest part, and I think we've all been waiting for about 9 months now to kind of see what this is going to be and what this is going to look like, and if it's going to be a success or if it's going to be a failure. Nobody knows. But because of those questions, the lack of knowing has got the anxiety levels up, has got the excitement levels up. And really, for the first time in a long, long time, there's a lot of hope around the North Carolina football program. And whether that transpires this year or maybe in the years to come, we'll have to see. But it's there and it's palpable. And I think at kickoff on Monday night, it's just going to be an incredible scene at Kenan Stadium.
I agree with that. You know what I always say about the hope? Just keep that in the back there. But to your point, and to quote one of our guests yesterday, what a time to be alive if you're a Carolina football fan. I mean, it is absolute insanity. Joey and I had the opportunity to talk to the showcase performer on Monday at the concert series. That'll drop this week. I'll drop the video after Inside Carolina Live and after the performance. He said the same thing. And Jason, this is one thing I want to talk about, and I'm talking about Chase Rice, folks. Chase talked to us earlier today ahead of his performance on Monday in Chapel Hill. He said he's tired of watching Carolina football not be physical. I'm not going to quote him exactly, but not be physical, to be soft, to be that. He is tired of seeing that. He's ready to see a physical football team, and he believes that's what we're going to get. That's the one thing I want to see come Monday. It's going to be all right if they're physical and they play smart football, win or lose. Jason, your take there.
Well, I mean, I think Belichick and the coaching staff would agree with that. I mean, that's been the drum they've been beating since they arrived. So we're going to find out whether or not beating that drum and playing as physical in camp as they have will ultimately pay off in that, in the opener. One would expect that it would. There's the old adage that you practice how you play, and or you play how you practice, that is. And, they've definitely practiced more physical So, you would expect that to pay off in that direction, but who knows?
And not only that, not only have they practiced more physical, we've heard that in recent weeks they had their most physical practices. So it's not like they were physical early and then tamed it down. They kind of went the other direction. And I think those types of approaches, one of the things that we heard when Belichick was hired, is that he almost kind of laughed at the idea that North Carolina was not tackling in spring ball. That's such a foreign concept of kind of what he believes and what he wants to do. So all those things, yes, it's going to be a change. I think Chase is right that it's time to see North Carolina get physical and just play hard nosed football. And if you make some mistakes out of aggression, so be it. I mean, if you get beat, you get beat. You're not going to get beat because you lay down or because you're too soft or because you're just arm tackling. You're going to get beat by somebody having to bloody your nose pretty viciously. And we have not seen that at times for North Carolina football in a number of years.
Indeed, and that's been the universal thing, as you guys talked about. It's been more physical. It's been attention to detail and things like that. So there'll be a lot to watch for. But what are you watching is what we're going to try to talk about in this show. Always Johnny T-Shirt and JohnnyT-Shirt.com before I forget them. And go to the On3 network if you're watching this and you haven't subscribed to Inside Carolina. It's $1. You can get $1 out of the change in the couch and sign up for Inside Carolina. And one thing you'll get, Greg Barnes' work. Greg, your column today, and I want to talk about it just very briefly. Your column today about the backstory about this hire I thought was fascinating. I thought also funny to see some comments like, "Oh, this is all the stuff we've known this already. It's just nice to see it written down." I don't ever remember hearing about Bresci talking to Belichick and all that, but just sort of comment on your work there. Toot your own horn a little bit, because that was a great article about the backstory of how we got here 2 days before kickoff.
Well, I think the key component there is that Inside Carolina has worked very hard over the last 25, 30 years now of trying to build sources and being reliable in what we report and building those relationships. And that's really the key to it. It's fun to be able to put that type of story together. Very beneficial that John Pryor was willing to go on the record. Sometimes that doesn't happen. And so that kind of gave us a good base. And then we were just really able to utilize our wide net of sources to kind of get down into the weeds a little bit and put it all together. And it's a fascinating story. And there's always a little bit of intrigue and some political maneuvering behind the scenes. And when you bring in somebody like Bill Belichick and you start talking about U.S. senators being involved, it really is fascinating. But that kind of speaks to the magnitude of somebody like Bill Belichick, who arguably is the greatest football coach who's ever lived, coming to a place like North Carolina that's not Alabama, that's not Ohio State, and trying to make it work and to see if it can work. I mean, I think that's the great question, right? Is everything that we've discussed for months now, and everything that was in that column that we ran today, it really speaks to all these pieces coming together to see if this grand experiment can work. And everybody from the biggest boosters to the fans that just became fans yesterday, right? Everybody involved wants to know the answer to that question. And the fact that we're only a couple of days away now, it's going to be fun to watch.
Yeah, let's get into it. Folks in the chat, obviously watching NC State, Duke, and Elon and all that. I'm just trying to keep the duct tape and all to keep this show on the road. So if for some reason I disappear, speaking of bad Wi-Fi, and if you read Greg Barnes's column, you'll know this reference. If I disappear, they've got it. They can handle it without me. But I'm going to tee it up. Jason Staples, number one thing, Carolina's on offense. First of all, I guess Chad Lindbergh's going to be a center if what we've been told is real. But either way, what do you want to see out of Carolina's offense from the jump against the TCU defense? I think that's got some solid players, especially in the middle.
Yeah, well, you said it right there, especially in the middle. To me, I want to see the center, the middle of the North Carolina offense hold up and start to create space and seams. So, I mean, I think early on, when everything's sort of very fresh at the beginning of the game, maybe outside of maybe a play that you've got dialed up that they don't expect, maybe you do get a big play there. But a lot of times, you come out and that first drive or two, sort of like boxers, feeling each other out a little bit, jab here, jab there, and you don't really get much. To me, what I want to see though, right from the jump, is just no leakage on the interior of the offensive line. Are you going to be able to run the football where, okay, maybe you only get 2 yards, 3 yards or whatever, but it's not because you've got run through situations or guys just getting their butt kicked on the offensive line and, skill position guys really not having a chance to make a play. That's the first thing I'm going to be looking at. And then the next thing after that is I really want to see physicality from the ball carriers that are running the football. Are they gonna shed a block? Are they gonna run through tackles? Because you're gonna need to get that kind of physicality from this offense over the course of the year in order to really be what they want to be. So to me, it's just, are they setting that physical tone on the line of scrimmage without leakage, without letting those defensive tackles, each up on the inside and, shed you too easily, without letting those backers get in the backfield? That's what I'm looking at. After that, a lot of other things come to be gravy. If you can control the line of scrimmage, if it's even just a stalemate early, that's a good sign because you're really big. And if you can stalemate them early, now you can potentially wear them down over the course of the game. But that's what I'm looking at.
Greg, you similar there?
I am, and I think Jason makes a great point because there's some good pieces here for North Carolina, really across the board. I'm not sure there's a lot of great pieces. And because there's 70-plus new players, you got to be able to see that come along. So if we do see a lot of cohesion and a lot of solid play preventing some of those lapses, that's obviously a very good sign of what the coaching staff has been able to do. But more than that, for North Carolina to be what they want to be this year, and especially on Monday night, you're going to have to see some individual plays. So whether that's running backs, breaking tackles, because the offensive line just struggles at times, whether it's a wide receiver running a perfect route to give himself an extra yard or two of space to be able to break off a 20-yard reception play. Whether there's an offensive lineman who's overmatched, but on one particular play kind of plays above his level and really does a good job of, with a pancake block or turning an end outside. Any of those things are going to add up, and that's what you're looking for. So if you don't have the immense talent where you can just lean on guys just doing exactly what they're supposed to do and knowing that that's going to win the day, you need to try to do those things anyway. But then you're also going to have some players make individual plays. And if those things take place, now you're talking about getting things rolling, building confidence. And that's what's going to happen, because I just don't know if the talent level is high enough where you can just kind of roll through and take advantage of some of these matchups the way you maybe normally could do.
Yeah, and all this applies to whoever plays, right?
Right.
Whoever's on the field. People in the chat are asking so-and-so's in, so-and-so's out. It doesn't matter. Neither team released depth charts. You guys can forget hearing about all that stuff unless it's a conference game where I believe there's a rule now they have to put all that stuff out. But at any rate, it doesn't matter who's on the field. But Jason, let me ask you about a guy who's they're going to be eyeballs on a lot. We saw Gio Lopez was named starting quarterback. Not surprising at all. How much pressure is on him to perform? Is it palpable for him, or is it just no pressure? I don't believe athletes when they say I don't feel pressure. I think everybody does, and I think it's natural. But for a guy like Gio Lopez, in this situation, given all we've talked about, how much pressure is on the young man?
So I don't think it's a situation where he would process it as pressure. He's going to be nervous. Everybody's nervous, right? You get the butterflies before a game. If you don't get butterflies before the game, then you don't care enough. You get that charged up feeling, but my sense is, after a long camp and all that, he's just going to want to get out there and play ball. And I think some of these guys, and I think Lopez is one of them. He's a confident guy, and I think he's not feeling so much pressure as he's feeling, man, I want to get out there and show what I can do. And I think that's a different way of thinking about it. I don't see him, because when I'm thinking, when you say pressure, I'm thinking what you're getting at is, man, I hope I don't go out there and blow it. And I don't think that thought has even crossed his mind. Just suspect that is not even in play. If you listen to him talk, if you watch his body language, if you know how this coaching staff coaches in terms of psychologically, I don't think that thought has crossed his mind. I don't think he believes that there's a chance that he's going to go out there and lay an egg. I think he's going like, man, I can't wait to get out there. I can't wait to get out there and get a chance to show what I can do. I just hope, I hope we're all ready. I think it's something like that. And there will be nerves, and there's going to be some of that. I think if anything, we're going to see him be maybe a little overly jacked up in that first, maybe overly hyped in that first drive or two. That's the drive, especially early in the season. That's the drive where you kind of expect a quarterback to overthrow a ball or two. There's just more juice on it. Sort of like in golf where, you go to the first tee and you've just hit it really well on the range. But there's a difference between the tingle you get in your fingers on the first tee than what you had on the range. On the range, you've got one swing. As soon as you get out there and you're, actually, this counts, there's a different tingle in your fingers. There's a little bit of a nervousness in your belly, and you've got to get through that. And then, and Greg, you can testify to this, when you're actually competing on the golf course, then that's amplified that much more. And you have to get used to throwing in that context. Actually, last year, Jacoby Criswell mentioned that was something that he was struggling with on his deep ball, is when he was in game contexts and his blood was pumping more and there was a little more nerves, he was having trouble dialing it down on those deep balls, and he was overthrowing deep balls. And I'll be honest, that's a place where when I hear that from a quarterback, my first thought is, they ain't working hard enough in practice then. They're not putting enough pressure on in practice. That means that things are too routine. So I suspect that, it's always an issue early in games with quarterbacks. Some guys are used to it and handle it a little bit better, but how you practice also impacts that too.
Tommy, the great Tiger Woods quote is, he said, "If I care, I'm nervous before a round." And I think you had Eric Church on. I'm sure before Eric takes stage, he may not qualify it as nervousness, but there's some adrenaline, right? There's butterflies. And what that is that's your body getting you psyched up to perform. And as Jason says, when you've done it enough times and you're passionate about it and you feel good about what you can do, that just means your body's ready. And once you get out there and you start rolling, you're going to excel. And the best excel better than anybody else, whether that's Tiger Woods or Eric Church. And so I think that's a kind of a key part is what do you mean by, the nervous, like Jason says? And I think really that everybody has those butterflies. Everybody's going to have them on Monday night, especially Gio. But it's getting in the game. I always think back to Marquise Williams. Mm-hmm. And he used to get amped up. And he had that big arm and would never throw people. And Fedora would always say, he needs to get hit. And once he got hit in the game, it released everything. And he could settle down, and then he was a gamer. And some people are like that. So it's just a matter of whatever works for him. And it may be an ugly first series, and that's okay. You just have to get into the season. But then once you're set and ready to go, that's when you start kind of falling back onto what you went through, what you practiced, what you know, and just kind of trust your instincts and your skill set.
Funny quick story here, just briefly. I was on the golf course with my 6-year-old not long ago, and it was just after she turned 6, and we were out there. She was playing from 35 yards or whatever, and had a 6-foot par putt, maybe 7 feet, and she gets up over the putt, and then she just looks up at me, and she's like, my hands are shaking. She's like, I'm like, my hands are trembling. I was like, that's good. That means you actually want to make it, because she was really, really focused. I want to get this par. She's like, my hands are shaking, and looked totally surprised. I was like, that's good. That means you really want to make this. Now just use that, focus on where you want to hit this, and knock it in. And she knocked it in and was super excited. But that's the kind of thing, like, that was totally new for her. Gio's started multiple games now. He's had that tingly feeling before. He's had the little tremble. And he knows, okay, this is how you got to adjust for this. I don't know about you, Greg, but there's certain things in competition, like for golf, there's certain things like a ball flight will change on you just a little bit under really nervous conditions. Like, okay, I know I'm going to hit it just a little bit further here, and I'm going to have a tendency to turn this over right to left just a little bit more under pressure than I will otherwise. So I have to know that might be coming. That's the sort of thing that an experienced guy will do. The good thing about Gio is he hasn't started a game for Carolina, but he has started, and he's had the opportunity to kind of feel that.
I just sort of glaze over because I suck at golf, so I just go play. I mean, it's like I tell people when I play with them, we're not doing this for a living. Stop taking it so seriously. Unless you're Greg Barnes when you're a pro. But I will say this, Greg, you do violate all my rules in that the better the person is, the worse they are to play with. That is not the case with Greg Barnes, because you are really good and you're cool to play with. We're talking with Greg Barnes, Jason Staples here on the Game Plan podcast. Haven't talked a ton about game plan because really we're not 100% sure. I want to hit receiver and running back before we jump to the defensive side. And Jason, I'll start with you, and then Greg, you can pick whichever one Jason didn't take. I think Benjamin Hall could be the guy. I've heard a lot of good things about Caleb Hood at running back. Bullitt is a guy that performed last year. I will say this about Hood. I wouldn't say shocked because it wasn't that drastic, but to see his body, the way he's changed his body this year compared to last year and years past, he looks ready to perform and be healthy. Now, he's got to get hit, and he's got to not get hurt when he gets hit. But he seems like a guy, Jason, to me, that he could certainly he could surprise some people, even with Hall on the roster, even with Goss on the roster.
Yeah, I mean, I think an argument could be made that he's the most talented back on the roster. It's just he's never been out of the training room for long enough. But you put him in really good shape, and he stays healthy, and he was highly regarded coming out of high school for a reason. Took him a little bit. He was a former quarterback, but the talent is there. I mean, he can be a really good player, and he's got size. He's got good speed. The other thing that Hood does also is you have him in the backfield. He also opens up some trick play opportunities for you as well, because he can throw that pill. So it's going to be interesting. I felt all along that if he made it through camp, he'd be probably a top 2 back on this roster in terms of carries if he could stay healthy. And he made it through camp healthy. Now it's going to be a question of what goes from there. And then, at receiver, I think they've got some potential dudes. I mean, I know they love Ship. I think Isaiah Johnson is a quality player with big play potential. We know what you've got with Pacor. Chris Culliver, if he ever plays hard and handles business, mentally, there's a lot there. Like Greg said earlier, I think there's actually more skill talent on this team than most outsiders would ever think. I think there's some legit skill talent on this team. So so much then comes down to how well they hold up front as a result, because I do think they've got some skill players to cause teams problems.
Greg, are we concerned, or is there a concern about Freddie Kitchens at OC?
I don't think so, because I think he's going to do exactly what Bill Belichick wants him to do. And if you're expecting Sonny Dykes' air raid offense to take the field on Monday, I'm sorry, it's not going to happen. I think this is going to be a somewhat of a conservative offense, at least to start. And I think with the running backs, to start there, what I find interesting is that as we've gone through training camp and really dating back to spring ball, for a couple of days or maybe even a week or two, you hear about, hey, French looked pretty good. He's really making moves. Jalen McGill, he's really surprised the coaching staff. They really like him. Hall, Michigan guy, like he's got a lot of potential. You can kind of see what they like in him. Davion Goss, he was kind of the anointed one. He's proven it, right? And now Caleb Hood. And so what I think is going on here is there's a lot of competition. Probably these guys aren't too far apart. And knowing what Bill Belichick has wanted to do for a long time, you're going to see a lot of different players play. And you don't have the preseason games in college that obviously you have at the NFL, where you can kind of test guys and put them in different positions and see how they perform under the lights. That's going to happen in really the first 3 to 4 weeks for North Carolina. So I think you're going to see a lot of different guys play. And I'm not even sure if you're talking about a hot hand situation, especially Monday may be a little different if it's a competitive game, but especially against Richmond and Charlotte. I think you're going to see a lot of different players play, especially at running back, but also at wide receiver. And so I think Kitchens probably has a game plan that's pretty conservative, and that's going to allow multiple guys to get in and see what they can do, because Belichick wants to be able to win with his defense. I think that's kind of a key component. Don't make mistakes, be smart, be physical, and beat the other team with physicality. That's kind of the name.
And every drive with a kick.
Correct. And so I don't think it's very complicated. The idea is not to have to take risks. And if that's the goal, people always got bored with John Shoop. But what did Butch always say? Just give us some time, and once we get enough talent in here, they're going to be scoring 42 points with the exact same offense because they're going to have better players in place. So some of that's going to apply here as well. So no, I don't think there's any concern with Freddie Kitchens as of yet. I think it's going to be a very simple game plan strategy. But I think they have options at running back. I agree exactly with what Jason said about wide receiver. There are some kids there, even though some of them are young, who have a lot of talent. Lonnie Galloway did a really good job kind of recruiting wide receivers, and Jordan Shipp and Chris Culliver fit that mold. Paysor as well. So you've got some experienced guys. You've got some young guys that have some pop to them. So I think there's a lot of options there for Gio Lopez as long as he's given some time to operate.
DWBS, do what Bill says. Hashtag. That'll be a thing for this coaching staff, I think. Talking with Greg Barnes, Jason Staples on the game plan, Johnny T-shirt, JohnnyT-shirt.com. 10% off if you're a member of Inside Carolina Premium subscriptions. Go to On3, sign up for $1. You get the Inside Carolina Premium deal. You get the code. You go to Johnny T-shirt. You get 10% off. They've got the Navy swag, the Navy football jerseys, some Navy gear, hoodies, some sweatshirts. It's supposed to be like in the 50s by the end of the game on Monday night. It's going to be absolutely perfect college football weather, and Johnny T-shirt can outfit you in whatever you may need. National guys pay the bills. It's the game plan. We'll be back to talk a little defense with Jason and Greg. All right, let's stick here. And Greg, I'll start with you this time. Defensive line, biggest concern for me out there, because I think they have dudes at linebacker and dudes at defensive back across the board. We can talk about them individually, but if you're going to build all the way out, and Jason and I talked about this on the scouting reports, if you're building from the inside out, Carolina did their best to get some beef on the inside. Mims from East Carolina. East Carolina could certainly be using him, I guess, right now against NC State. But your thoughts on this defense holistically, and then we'll dig into them individually. I think, to your point, Belichick wants to have tough defense, win with defense. 6-3 would be wonderful. Greg Barnes would be over the moon. But your thoughts on if they actually got the dudes that can do it, plus the coaching that they've gotten and will get.
See, that's the question right there, Tommy, is you have talent, you have prospects, and then you have how they're coached. And that's one of the unique things about this setup is you've got a lot of really good NFL coaches in place, as well as some good college coaches. But we saw Belichick countless times bring in somebody, at New England, and you're like, okay, like that's a fine signing. And then the next thing you know, the guy pops. So it's really a matter of, did he get guys in place, regardless of what their recruiting rankings are, regardless of what they did at their previous stop, that he likes and he can maximize what they do well. And I think the size is a big part of it because they don't want to be pushed around at the line of scrimmage. I think that's number one. And then beyond that, if you can prevent being pushed back, can you then be able to get into the opposing team's backfield and put pressure on the run game, and then on third down, on obvious passing downs, you get after the quarterback. And I think that's kind of the key because, as you mentioned, I think the linebackers and the defensive backs are going to be solid enough as long as they're given some opportunities. And if the defense can do a good job up front and force the other team to play behind the chains, you'll see some positive things. But as you mentioned, Mims, you heard a lot of good things about Price Yates. Just a lot of guys here that have good size. Can that translate into doing the small things that Belichick's asking? And just because they don't have gaudy stat lines at their previous stops, that doesn't really mean anything. And that's really the main thing that I think we all should be watching on Monday night is, can they be effective? Because they got a lot of guys out there. They got about 15 guys along the defensive line. So you've got plenty of bodies to roll in. So you don't have to rely on one or two guys. But are some of those guys capable of doing the things that you're asking them to do to allow those linebackers and those defensive backs to do what they do best?
All right, we're going to get to special teams, Jim. I see you in the chat. I starred your chat. We got you. But, Jason, on this defense, how much can you actually coach up a guy before talent eventually shows itself and limits you?
I would put it backwards. You start with the talent, and then you coach. How much you're able to get out of him is limited by the ceiling that's provided by the talent. You see the difference in talent immediately. I mean, look, when you start with a Marvin Austin, you've got a better block of marble than you've got if you start with just random walk-on. And one old coach that I knew used to say, still probably does say, big guys do more good by accident than little guys do on purpose. There's a big reason why he liked to recruit bigger players at different positions. When in doubt, take the bigger guy. So talent matters from minute one. The question, though, is how much can you close the gap by a guy having that much better technique, that much better tenacity, and all the things that you can coach into a guy? And how much can you take the guy that's pretty talented and extend that gap over a guy that's less talented? So it's kind of, I think of it kind of in the opposite direction, in that, the talent difference shows up immediately. It's just a matter of how much can you mitigate it. It's sort of like combat sports, right? Weight class matters. You put me in the ring against, a world-class 110-pound female striker, in a combat sport, and despite my concussions, eventually my body weight and bigger reach and all that is gonna matter, right? And the skill is probably not gonna matter. That's just the way that works. And there's an old rule in combat sports that basically it's I think 20 pounds equals a belt or two. I can't remember that to compensate for that. But when you start to get close enough, yeah, I'm seeing people commenting on this. But when you get close enough in terms of body weight or reach or that sort of thing, then, a 180-pound person probably kicks my tail up and down, up one side of the ring and down the other, regardless of how much bigger, or regardless of my body weight, because of their training, right? So that's the thing is it requires some level of physical ability to start with, but there is a certain amount that technique can compensate for when it comes to that. But, it matters.
I think we'll see some guys make some plays. Again, I think I've said it, talent may get this team, and I'm glad they're starting with TCU to see it right out of the gate because I think TCU is a quality opponent. Greg, let's talk special teams. I'll freely admit I've attended 3 or 4 practices and probably, how long would you say, Jason, combined? 30 minutes of viewing?
You've seen about 35 minutes of warm-ups.
Yeah, and so we haven't seen a ton on special teams, but Bill Belichick wants to be good on special teams. I did see Will Hardy returning kicks or returning punts back there in one of the days we were out there. But, Greg, the importance of special teams for Belichick, for Carolina. I mean, somebody in the chat mentioned, I forget who they were playing, but the team blocked the punt the exact same way twice in a row against Carolina. I don't think we will see those type performances, which goes back to what I've said. I don't see good quality football, win or lose. But, Greg, the importance of special teams and just the historical aspect of it with Belichick's teams.
Well, you've got 3 phases of the game. And if you're not elite in offense and you're not elite on defense, you need to be really good on special teams. Clemson last year is a good example. They were pretty good offensively. They were okay defensively. They weren't very good special teams wise. And they were able to mitigate some damage that way. But Frank Beamer had a lot of success building off of special teams. And you pair that with defense, and all of a sudden you're in business. If 2 of your 3 are very good, that gets you a long way. Belichick is, I think at the NFL level, it's a little bit different because you have such a small roster. And you got so many key guys that are having to play there anyway. So that's not the glaring issue that what we see in college at times. I think the problem for Belichick with special teams this year is that we're talking about not knowing if they have talent for offense and defense. Right? And those are the 2 key phases. And really I know you're going to have some of your key guys are going to have to play special teams, but typically a little bit of your leftovers, your reserves filter down into your special teams units. And if your offense and defense maybe aren't very good or great, what does that say about special teams? And I think that's part of the challenge is you want to be able to give your key guys on offense and defense some rest, some breaks, but that means that maybe you have guys who aren't even ready to play on offense or defense having to fill some gaps on special teams. And so it really is, you're trying to keep all this together. You want guys to stay healthy. You want a very simple plan that the guys can execute flawlessly, and you coach them up. And that's really all you can ask for. And as we've talked about so many times before, you may get out-physicaled, right? You may get out-talented, but don't get out-coached. Do your job to the best of your ability. And if somebody's just quicker or faster than you, so be it. But don't let it be because of mental lapses or mistakes that you make, because those just can't happen when you've got some of the talent issues that this team likely has.
Yeah.
And this is one of the reasons why they went out and signed so many transfers at linebacker and defensive back. Because you've got to have guys that can run and hit for your special teams. And that means you need extra bodies that are essentially DBs and linebackers for special teams. And, that's where some of those guys, some of the younger guys that they signed that are more developmental pieces with, decent physical profiles, that's where those guys are going to go.
Guys, how many linebackers did North Carolina have last year and the year before? Do you remember?
Played or had?
That had, like, on roster.
7, I think.
Right? I mean, it's a very small number. They've got 13 linebackers on the roster right now. They've got 20 defensive backs. So to
Jason's point.
Right.
Yeah. And Bill's going to always load up on those guys for that exact reason, because he believes you've got to have those guys for special teams.
And only 2 of the linebackers played.
That's right. for 5 years. Yeah.
Yeah, like 5,000 snaps. Talking with Jason and Greg. Now we're going to do predictions, but we're going to talk about what actually happens. So this is the crystal ball predictions. This is going to happen. This is how it results. And Greg, I'll start with you. Just get into it right away. What do you think happens on Monday night when we roll the ball out and all the fanfare is over, the concerts are over, all that stuff, and it is time to kick it off? What happens in Kenan Stadium?
So I think what everybody needs to understand is that the scene on Monday night in Chapel Hill is going to be incredible. It's going to be loud. You're going to have hair on your arms. This is going to be standing up. You're going to have chill bumps. If you're at home watching, you're going to have chill bumps. It's going to be that type of scene. And so because of that, TCU is in a unique situation. There's going to be a lot of energy and emotion against them. And I think one of the things that TCU does so well is they have a very experienced quarterback. Josh Hoover had a really good year last year. He's a kind of a Dallas-Fort Worth kid anyway. Loves it there at TCU. Sonny Dykes comes from the Air Raid family. He does have a little bit more of the running game and play. Not quite like Phil Longo, but kind of similar in idea. So I think what you're going to see TCU try to do is try to squelch some of that emotion early by being aggressive. And yeah, I understand, the first series or two, you may be just playing, you're kind of filling each other out. But I think before we get too far into the first half, there's going to be some attempts to hurry up the game with the no-huddle approach, really push the ball down the field, and use Josh Hoover to try to give you a lead if you're Sonny Dykes. And as soon as you take a lead, that lets some of the air out of the balloon. And I really think that's kind of the key component for North Carolina is making sure that they're buttoned up on the back end. And I think that's one of their strengths is going to be because I think the defensive backfield is really strong. But regardless of how good they are, if Hoover has all day to throw, that's a problem. And so it's really being tight on defense and understanding that it may take the offense a little bit of time to kind of get rolling and to figure things out. So for me, it really comes down to how well does Steve Belichick have that defense playing. They don't have to be elite, but they have to be efficient, and they have to really limit what TCU can do. Give Gio Lopez some time to kind of get going. If that happens, I think North Carolina is going to be in a really good position come second half. If TCU scores a couple easy touchdowns early, I think it's probably going to be too big of a chore for North Carolina to come back.
I'll get your score in a little bit. But, Jason, your take on what happens. I like Greg's point that TCU is going to try to jump on this early. I do find it funny, and we've talked about it before, that TCU was in this exact same situation 2 years ago in Colorado with the same similar hype circumstances playing a Colorado team with Dion. But, Jason, differences in that game maybe, but also how does this play out for North Carolina? What do we see on the field that win or lose makes Carolina fans encouraged, but also affects the outcome of the game, win or lose for North Carolina? That's a great complex question, by the way.
Boy, there's a whole lot of meat on that turkey.
Yeah, so I just lay it out there, lay the buffet out, and let y'all eat. And I don't have the hourglass, so.
Yeah, I was about to say you might need to get that hourglass for me, given a question like that. But yeah, get that egg timer out. But yeah, I mean, I think one thing I'd forgotten until I started prepping for this show, and looking ahead at what TCU actually does. I'd forgotten that their offensive coordinator is actually Kendall Briles, and I've sat in Kendall Briles' office. I've sat through a meeting with Kendall. I know his offense actually pretty well. They will, and actually, it's also interesting that they're going to run a lot of the same stuff that Clemson runs. I mean, they're going to run very similar offense to what Clemson runs in terms of what they'll call. So that actually is interesting. Just thinking ahead, but they're going to. The thing about Kendall is, first of all, tempo is a big deal for him. If you can get first down stops, if you can win first down and keep them off leverage, that dramatically changes Briles' offense. If they stay ahead of the chains, it can get brutal, and it can get. I mean, they can put a lot of numbers on you quick. And the other thing is that Briles will never fully abandon the run. They may, there's some air raid influence and all that with Sonny Dykes and all that, but that Briles offense is really it's sort of the veer and shoot. Now they've hybridized it a little bit with Dyke stuff and all of that. But the thing that you're going to get out of TCU is they are going to really test you with a lot of vertical choice stuff, and then and force you to have to cover downfield. And what a vertical choice is they're going to send a receiver downfield where he has essentially 3, sometimes 4 options on what he's doing. He's going to run a vertical stem, and when he gets to 10, 12 yards, he's either going to the post at a high angle, or he's going outside on a go route, or he might go outside and then sit it down in like a comeback or a fallout type route, or he can just sit in the stick. And you've got all of those options are in play, and depending on what the coverage is doing and where he is relative to leverage of the defensive back, he's going to do any one of those, and the quarterback just has to be on the same page. Now, every so often that leads to being on a different page. You get a throw to nowhere kind of thing, but you can put up filthy numbers doing that because you read, okay, well, it's middle of the field open, corner's bailing, so that's taking away that vertical to the outside, coming right inside, or coming right over the top there to the open middle field. And you just have the quarterback throw there and a guy's wide open. It can get tough to cover. Now, the thing is, if you can pressure the quarterback quickly enough, that can change the math in terms of how much you're able to do the vertical choice stuff. So you go back to when Kendall was at Florida State, and they were so bad on the offensive line, they really struggled to throw downfield and get some of that stuff done. So first and foremost, Carolina's pass rush, and specifically the more you can get that pass rush up the middle, is going to be really important in this game. But the other thing too is, again, like I said, they're not going to stop running the football because Briles really believes in the veer aspect of the veer and shoot. They're going to run power. They're going to run counter. They're gonna try to take advantage of you on the inside, and the way that they block it, they're gonna try to run A gap stuff. They want to run straight at your defensive tackles and push you around. And some of us have been around long enough to remember that Baylor game where Baylor started a wide receiver basically at quarterback. You know who was calling that offense? Kendall Briles.
Yep. So
my concern coming into this game is that Kendall's looking at this defense and saying, you know what, I think I'm going to be able to run it on them. I'm going to be able to run it up the middle. So much of what we're going to find out about this team and this game is going to be in the first 2-3 drives of the offense, where they're going to try to test that interior. And if they're getting space, it could be a long night. What you said, Greg, about them getting a lead and then that maybe being too much, they get space and they cause problems there, that's your problem. If Carolina is able to plug that middle and do all of that without having to invest those safeties coming down, because the thing is that what they want to do is force you to bring that extra guy in the box, and then it's vertical choice, and you're getting free runners up the middle of the field on those verts. And that is, oh my gosh, that is really bad. You want to be able to play too deep on this. You want to play, cover 4 with some guys over the top. You want to be able to play cover 3 with a deeper than normal safety. You want to be able to do that stuff, and it all comes down to the interior. I don't know what's going to happen there, but I think the football game is going to be decided probably with that. Now, the positive, if I'm looking at this from Carolina's perspective, flipping over, and I know the egg timer's, going off right now and all, but Greg, any idea how many rushing yards per game TCU gave up last year?
Gave up. No, I do not.
They weren't good.
They gave up 160.5 rushing yards per game, which was good for 12th in their conference last year. Now, they got a couple guys they got one guy back from injury who was important for them the year before. They added a key transfer there on the defensive line. But they have their own questions and concerns about stopping the run. So, to me, the team that runs the football is going to have a lot of good chances in this game. Their quarterback's really good. I think Carolina's secondary is really good. They're going to need to be balanced to be able to beat this Carolina team. I think it's going to be a really interesting game, but those are the places where my eyes are going to go. I don't know exactly what's going to happen. I think we know too little, but if I'm Carolina, I'm looking at that 160.5 rushing yards a game, and I'm saying, let's see if we can go for 250.
All right, Jason, you went there, so I'm going to offer up a thought experiment for the group. In 2015, in that Baylor game, Kendall's Art's offense ran for a bowl record 645 yards. If TCU were to run for 645 yards on Monday night, what would practice look like on Tuesday?
I see dead people. It's a movie quote,
on
folks.
that one. I can't improve on that one.
It's fascinating to me, though. We're talking about a football field that's 100 yards long, 53 yards wide, and this game's going to be decided in that 4-yard box around the football when it's laid and put in play. And that's what this is all about. And that's why, for me, I've said all along, I just wish Carolina had one more stud defensive tackle. Maybe they have them. We haven't seen them, but it comes down to that. Great stuff from both of you.
Blasky.
And Blasky's got to get healthy. And, we'll see. Prediction time, score time. I know what we did on the prediction show, but now we need scores, and y'all need to write them down so we're not piggybacking. If folks are watching this year, if you remember in years past, all they copy each other. For the most part, we're not going to have that anymore. They have to write it down.
We were piggybacking. We just had the same stuff. We did last year about half the time.
We have to prove that. But I'm gonna stick with my TCU prediction. But I will say this: I have come. If I were a betting person, I would probably feel the need to lay some on Carolina. It just seems like this is the time for Carolina football to officially jump the hump, and I don't know. I'll be in the stands watching, that's for sure. We'll be doing Inside Carolina Live from 5 to 7 with a lot of awesome content. But Greg, I'll put you on the clock first.
All right, one other stat to kind of fill out what Jason was saying about the TCU passing game. They ranked 20th last year in sacks allowed. They only gave up 16 sacks in 13 games.
They do get the ball out quickly.
Right. So that's a big part of it as well. And that kind of gets back to the fact of you don't necessarily have to get to the quarterback to get him down, but you have to be effective up front. I was going to use my Iowa football pad. Iowa sends these things out every year for like Heisman stuff. It's fantastic. But I'm not going to use that.
Who's getting the Heisman for Iowa this year?
I don't know.
I'm surprised that's not a pit pad for you, Greg.
So I preserve those. I've got a whole stack in the closet.
I was going to say, didn't Narduzzi give you a bunch of those when you were on the private plane with him last year?
Yeah.
He signed them, so I'm not going to just.
He signed multiple pages.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to just write on those with a random score. Come on. All right, so we talked about this a couple weeks ago. I think there's a lot of good points made in the predictions podcast. I think that's a good one to go back and watch. My opinion really has not changed. Just we don't know enough right now, as we've said a couple times tonight. And TCU, they started last year 3-3. They finished up at 9-4. Played really well down the stretch. The defense turned it around. They gave up, I think, 75 fewer yards the last 4 games than they had the previous part of the season. Held opponents down scoring wise. So Andy Avalos had done a really good job kind of getting that defense to bite late. I know there's new additions there, but when you start talking about a guy like Josh Hoover, he's the guy that's going to be all Big 12 again. I just think there's too much in TCU's favor for game one. And so because of that, I've got North Carolina being competitive, but I have North Carolina losing in the first game. I guess I don't even need to show this. First game of the Bill Belichick era, 24-17.
There's going to be a difference here.
That doesn't count as a muted. That does not count as a muted. Jason, you're up. 24-17 for Greg.
There's going to be a little difference here because I think this is going to be a higher scoring game. Much to Greg Barnes' chagrin, I think Greg will be very chagrined after this game because I think there's going to be some points scored on both sides, and you're probably going to be on the phone with Pat Narduzzi after the game going, Pat, what do we need to do? What do we need to do to get the score down on both sides? But I echo a lot of what you just said there. I think there's just a lot we don't know, and I'm not confident enough that all the pieces will be gelled sufficiently at this point to really pick Carolina to win this game. I will say TCU's record, their history under this staff in openers and in the early season, that actually should give Carolina fans some hope. They've not been very good in openers. And that extends actually beyond the tenure at just TCU here. So it's possible. We could all have egg on our face and all of that after this. But again, just want to put that caveat out there. We're kind of guessing blind to some degree right now, more than we ever have. But I do think ultimately I'm going to go with the quarterback who threw for almost 4,000 yards last year at this level. And I think a team that sort of found their stride last year in a lot of ways down the stretch and returns a lot of key pieces. They're replacing some others, but I think the safer pick is TCU. But I do think this is going to be a close game. I would not be surprised with almost any outcome, to be honest, in this game. But I'm going to go with TCU winning, and my score is 34-31. I think this is going to be a higher scoring game as both teams find some success in the running game, and then that leads to some success down the field. I think also for both teams, but more success down the field, I think, for TCU in this one as a result of their quarterback and receiver situation. But again, my confidence level is somewhere around 15% on this. And, we'll see as the season goes whether or not we get a much better feel. I think it'll take probably about a month before we really have a good feel for the Belichick era at Carolina.
Yeah, there's been a ton of great questions. We're not going to get to all of them because I want to keep this under an hour. But Irvin in the chat earlier said, how long do you think it would take before Bill Belichick knows what he has in the way of talent and consequently has a clear idea of how to optimize and strategize? I think that is a great question. I don't think we find that out on Monday night. I think TCU has less questions than North Carolina, and that's why I'm picking TCU. I'm going 31-29. Got to be different somewhere, If everybody's
you write these down, you're piggybacking on that one and just changing a number.
No, I had 29 in mind, but I could say 51-49 in 4 overtimes, and then everybody, and it ends at 2:00 in the morning, and then we're doing the day after, before I even go to bed. So,
Tommy, I think that question though is a very good one.
Yep.
Because Bill Belichick has been in Chapel Hill for 9 months, and they've had their off-season workouts. They've had spring practice. They've had summer workouts. They've had training camp. They've gotten a lot of experience with him and his staff. That being said, they have never been in a game with Bill Belichick. They have never been in a post-game scenario with Bill Belichick. And they have never been in the next day cleanup film session with Bill Belichick. And so I think, yes, you're right. Belichick's not going to know exactly what he has on Monday night. He probably has a pretty good idea. But until he actually sees that game take place and he gets a chance to make corrections with the kids and go through film with them, and then see how they perform the next week, and then see how they perform the next week. I think through those first 3 games, they're going to have a very good idea of what they have and who are the key guys. That's one of the reasons I think Monday night we're probably going to see a bunch of kids play just to see how they hold up, especially if there's a lot of guys pretty similar in talent level or production level. There's got to be a ringer to put them through. And it's not just playing. It's how do they handle disappointment? How do they handle success? How do they handle harsh film study? How quickly do they pick it up? All those things are critically important. And even though they've spent so much time with Belichick, they've not gone through that process yet. And I think that's key for this program in the months ahead. So it's a great question, and it's one that certainly he won't know by Monday night.
I think another thing to add to that is in terms of the talent level, Bill's always been a very good judge of talent, obviously. I mean, his dad wrote the book on scouting, right? But at the same point, it's different to scout for the NFL and to kind of know where a guy sort of fits in the pecking order of the NFL. And I think they know, like, okay, this guy, and this guy on our roster, those guys are NFL guys. I think they know that. The hard part is if you've not actually coached against other college rosters, is really knowing where your roster fits versus other ones. Because, in the NFL, the other thing about, you mentioned in special teams, they've got tighter rosters and all that. The other thing is in the NFL, when you've got guys on the field, every guy in the NFL is an NFL player. He's an NFL level player. Like, you don't have walk-ons and guys that just, probably just aren't good enough to play at that level on your roster. In college, every team, virtually almost every team, has a few of those guys. Now, most of them don't play, but sometimes that guy ends up on the field. So, it's a different thing. I think that's the other thing, is not having coached in college, not having any experience against other rosters. Some of these guys, it's going to be a little bit of a learning curve on that. And I think, again, 3 games, the 3-game preseason, and I think these first 3 games, even the TCU game, you have to think of these as preseason games. By the end of that, I think they're all going to know really well kind of what they have.
Great stuff from Greg and Jason. It's a game plan, and Carolina has a game on Monday night at 8 o'clock against TCU. What will happen? Greg and Jason laid out not necessarily what will happen, but what you should expect to see and expect to take from the game. Greg, Jason, Johnny T-shirt, almost 300 people in here. It's going to be fun to talk about this one on Tuesday, but stay tuned to Inside Carolina for all the coverage leading up to Monday night. Inside Carolina Live in the Bowls Lot, 5 to 7 p.m. Come see the crew down there. To be a fun time. Whatever you do, get to Chapel Hill on Monday, because like Greg said, it's going to be like nothing we have ever seen around Carolina football on Monday, Labor Day, in Chapel Hill. Everybody stay safe. We'll see you around. Shout out to Johnny T-shirt, Greg and Jason. Peace.